Like the Spider-Man saying, isn't it in Spider-Man that he says, with great power comes great responsibility? I think it's really important that you have a strong foundation to the way that you're leading and directing. Unfortunately, the hardships that you went through and the fact that it even lasted as long as it did, I want your story to be able to help and empower other people who don't, get caught up in that. Welcome back to the Successful Stylist Academy podcast. All my friends, I am so excited to start out a new season with you. And I listened to you guys. You made a suggestion on shorter time spans. So we're going to go in for 20-minute segments with some of my favorite people, my friends. And today we're going to hang out with Kenneth Rodriguez, who is known as Stud Muffinkin on Instagram. We had a chance to hang out at Premier Anaheim, and we hung out for a while, just chatting it up about the industry and just where success comes from. So, hey, Kenny, how's it going?
Hey, good. I'm excited to be here.
I know, I'm excited to have you here. You're just a ray of sunshine. And for those of you guys who are listening, you can't see him, but he has such impeccable taste. And I just love his style. And everyone kept stopping him and being like, oh my God, I love your jacket, or I love your outfit. I love your style, all that stuff. So it's really fun to see how creatively you express yourself. So can we start out from the beginning? How did you start your career as a hairstylist?
Well, I was introduced to the industry through a friend whose hairdresser is now like the director of like social media on Olaplex. And she noticed that I was just really into doing hair in general. I used to give myself fades, put designs in my own hair. And every time I would see her, she was like, oh my God, every time I see you, your hair is like so dope. Like, where do you go? And I was like, well, I do it myself. She was like, no way. You should really check out like Paul Mitchell, the school. Fern the barber teaches there, and like this, blah, blah, blah. You might really like it. And I was like, you know what? I'll check it out. So I did. I went to Paul Mitchell in Pasadena, and then I did that for a year. And then I got introduced into this girl, Lex, and Lex introduced me to the hairdresser I ended up assisting. So that's basically, yeah, I started assisting. I did that for a few years. And then I finally, when I went on my own, it just took off from there.
I love a good story where it's like you started out just naturally in it and you didn't have to chase anything. How amazing is that? So it's like almost the industry found you before you found the industry, it sounds like. So if we were to talk about like that next step where the industry started to take off for you, what learning lessons did you encounter as you were becoming and developing yourself as a stylist? Like, I would love to hear a little bit of your background and your journey from like finding your salon space and the people that you gravitated toward and all that good stuff.
So finding my salon space, well, like I said, when I was in beauty school, I was approached by this girl and she propositioned me into assisting this person that we were like, oh, you guys would be a good fit. Like, you have a really good style. And then I just think you guys would be a perfect match. So I was like, okay, cool. So I did. And then that person was like a social media like influencer, sponsored artist at the time. And I kind of got to get really well introduced into the community through that situation. And from there, I kind of like just met stylists along the way and found different, when I did go on my own, I kind of had like a pretty good idea of the industry and like what kind of community I wanted to participate in. And so now I work with like really cool artists who've like been, I don't know, they've done really cool things in the industry and are really well connected and just also really kind and inspiring people as well. But getting there was definitely not easy, and sometimes when you are dealing like in an assistantship and you have like a mentor, sometimes it could be a beautiful experience. Sometimes it's a little much, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. And I kind of feel like I want to draw back the curtains on that a little bit because I think I've talked about this before, and sorry if I sound like a broken record, you guys, but I do feel like there's a difference between being an apprentice and being an assistant. And regardless of what's happening as a mentor, as somebody who brings in an assistant or an apprentice, I think it's really important that you have a strong foundation to the way that you're leading and directing, and also like setting an example and all the things that we've talked about in the past. So without getting too deep into it, I definitely want to hear a little bit about some of your hardships or learning lessons with that too, as you were exploring that assistant program? And I know a lot more details in it, but I know that you don't want to give too much information as far as spilling the tea, but I definitely want to hear a little bit about some hardships that you kind of encountered and what you did about it in order to move forward from that too.
So for my situation, it was definitely like the proposition was like a mentorship, was um, you will meet like owners of companies, distributors, you'll be in these types of places. And At the time, it was also like, but I'm not going to file you for taxes and you're going to be paid this rate. And At that time, it was minimum wage, which was $10 an hour. And But you don't have to do taxes and blah blah blah. So I was kind of like, oh, I mean, sure, whatever. So going into it, the first month, it was kind of like I was getting a feel for what the routine was, what the, I guess, grunt work was supposed to be. And then I was there maybe like 4 days of that week, unpaid, which is totally fine at the time, you know. And After that, a month in, that person kind of got like the gauge where my capabilities were in terms of actual hairdressing and trusted me and left me to do basically her work. And so I would show up to work, start the process, maybe like 3 or 4 hours into the day. She would roll in, show up, and maybe like do the finishing touches. And at the time, I felt like, oh wow, okay, this person like, you know, has brands behind her and has this kind of presence and trusts me with her work. And Okay, that's pretty cool. I was like, you know what, I'm getting all this experience straight out of beauty school a month after. And I was basically working as a full-time hairdresser without having to build a clientele, right? But also getting paid $10 an hour, which continued to the very end, which was a few years in. So after,
Wow.
yeah, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, it was like, okay, well, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to dinners. I'm going to like all these cool things. But slowly that stuff like stopped happening. And instead, it became more of like I was now doing the work, closing people out without that person even be present. And and like I said, my cutoff was $10 an hour, hourly wage, and no raises came with it. Maybe towards like the very end, I pleaded for a raise, said, no, you don't deserve it. You're this, you're that. You know, and if you deserve a raise, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And then finally that raise came in, it was like $1. So like minimum wage is like 15, and like I was like paying hit 11, you know. So
Oh my gosh. Wow. I'm so sorry that
yeah,
you went through that. It's so crazy and I know that you're trying to gingerly like handle this and you're being careful about your wording and stuff. And
yes.
I understand like, you know, saving face and trying to be the better person and stuff. But I think it's really important that you share this story for those who are listening because first of all, there's a lot that we could say about this, just on a moral scale, right? Um,
Absolutely.
but aside from the moral side of it, just even the legal standpoint, the fact that you were brought on, but you didn't have to file taxes, that's like not legal. And
Absolutely.
but that's not your job to know that, right? And so I really hope
Mhm.
that unfortunately the hardships that you went through and the fact that even lasted as long as it did, I want your story to be able to help and empower other people who don't, you know, get caught up in that and have to deal with that same thing because then you had to start building your books after that. You had to go through all of that stuff, making money for someone else and not getting paid and only being staying at minimum wage and you didn't have a mentor helping you through that and you had to kind of figure that out for yourself And that
Mhm.
like kind of breaks my heart hearing that. But at the same time, I just love that you have such a strong spirit and you are
Mhm.
allowing yourself to use that as a not instead of a crutch, you're using that as a ladder. You're using that as a way to build yourself up and you're building other people up in return. So I feel like that kind of just segues us into the right next thing, which is the top 5 tips. Like we love hearing these top 5 tips because it's so true to like what action we need to place into things. And no matter what happens on a personal level, on an emotional level, if we fall into these tips to kind of get us back into like where our core comes from and what helps us grow, I really feel like that's what you do when you reach hardships, it's these tips that help you get back into like what you love doing. And so I would love to hear from you what your top 5 tips might be for being a successful hairstylist. Like, what would you pass on to those who are listening that you have found to be your level of success?
I guess my first tip would be when you're entering, whether you are employing or an employer, a mentee or a mentor, kind of go into the circumstance and the situation knowing what you want from it, right? So maybe you are an assistant straight out of beauty school and you feel like you have so much to learn. You can and you're like, okay, I have so much to learn. What kind of job do I want? What kind of person do I want to work under? Do I want to work for a salon that's going to pay me the hourly rate? It's going to take care of me, and then I can pursue my education, or do I want like on my own, and then do I want a mentor and somebody who's going to like kind of guide me through the industry, and then once you figure out what it is you're kind of seeking, now what kind of person are you, and what kind of person do you want to emulate, and then what kind of person is actually going to maybe bring that toward for you. Uh, I guess, and then as a mentor, when you are or a mentor or an employer, I would say know exactly what you want as well. Like, are you employing somebody because you just need help? Maybe you're overly booked. Maybe you are no longer in prime health and you need somebody to kind of take off some of the workload, and you know that you're going in that I need a helper. And that's all it is. Because not everybody's meant to be a mentor, you know? And then as a mentor, what do you want from that? And then uplift this person in the industry? How are you going to guide them? And how far do you want it to go? Right? Because sometimes it just reaches a cap. And when it reaches a cap, we both have to, from an employer and an employee standpoint, I think it's important to both know when the cap is, right? And not drag it and not think that, well, you know what, this person actually like does the job that I need them to do, and like, and now I'm no longer have to be in the salon. I'm still getting paid the same, and I can have them. I can trust them to handle it for me. All that's like, okay, that's bordering that's bordering exploitation is exploitation, you know. Um, so like I said, yeah, going in, knowing what you want, and then knowing where the boundary is, right? Uh, and then along with that, I would say if you are ever in a situation where you feel like you're no longer growing from, or this is no longer for you, or feels toxic, or it feels, or even if it's great, but it's just your time to move on, knowing when that is, and knowing that you will be okay in your next step, and just do it. You know,
Yeah.
don't let anybody make you believe that you aren't going to thrive in this industry. This industry is so large. There's so many people to fill your chair in the world, everybody's chair, you know, like your people will find you and your community will find you. And as long as because this industry isn't for the weak, and like, absolutely, because you have to be able to network, you have to be able to like retain clientele, you have to be someone that people want to support, you know?
Right. Right.
And yeah, so if you are at that point where you feel like, okay, you know what, I can take this on, just do it. And if you feel like you're not, but you're also not fulfilled in your current position, what's the next step? How am I going to get there? Yeah.
Absolutely. These are all
Yeah.
really great pieces of advice, but I think the one thing that I would find sitting under this umbrella that I want to piggyback off
Mhm.
of is like the Spider-Man saying, isn't it in Spider-Man that he says, with great power comes great responsibility? I think
Absolutely.
it's so important that no matter what it is that you're doing, when you bring someone along your journey as a mentor, as a salon owner, as an employer, it's really important that you're not bringing them in because you need relief. You're bringing them in because you're ready to pass your knowledge on to other people and empower them to grow. And by empowering others to grow, that actually helps you grow too. But understanding, like kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying, Kenny, like knowing what you want from being a mentor mentee and where's your end cap, like what's the end goal that you have in mind. And I think it
Yeah.
just kind of goes under that same thing, like being with somebody. It's so important that you're not just doing it for the benefit of yourself, but you're doing it as co-collaboration. And whenever you're doing co-collaboration together, everyone can have their roles. Like you could still have a mentor mentee, but you can't grow together unless you have that safe space to do that. And so that's where it can kind of take over, or someone might feel taken advantage of, or it can become a toxic environment, or it can feel unbalanced or mismatched because somebody might be just thinking about their own gain from it. So I think that's such a strong message. And I almost feel
Mhm.
like nobody really talks about that. And I think that's such an important
Absolutely.
thing to hear. So I'm so glad that you shared that. So thank you for being vulnerable enough to share that with the audience and just like speaking it and being able to rise above and be a stronger voice for that too. So with that said, what do you feel like you have been like so far your biggest learning lessons? If you could just like wrap all this up into one pretty bow.
I really liked what you said about, having the responsibility and then knowing where you wanted to go. And so obviously that's what I said, and you piggybacked off of it. And then it was like, I guess what I also want to portray is a lesson that I have taken from this would be to follow your instincts, right? So there was so many times in that situation where my spidey senses were tingling, and I was like, I need to get out of here, and I need to do my own thing. I feel like I was in a kind of special situation where it was like this person is kind of known in the industry, and that person would use that time or use that influence and that power to kind of reel back in and be like, you know what? If I go on social media and I say this and this and this, what do you think that they're gonna say? And I was like, you know what? Like me being a newbie in the industry, at that point I wasn't a newbie in the industry anymore, but I wasn't yet a booth renter. I wasn't yet like doing my own thing, right? Um, I was like, wow, I don't want to enter this on a bad foot. I don't want to enter the community on a bad foot. So I would kind of stay and I would kind of like, even though my intuition said something, one thing, I knew that the repercussion could be something crazy, right? So when I finally was like, enough's enough, and I left, there was still a repercussion. It did become something that was talked about on social media that was kind of like, um, yeah, it was insane. If you were a part of it, if you not part of it, but if you know, you know. If you don't, well, I'm not gonna. Yeah, but but I don't stay in situations that you know you shouldn't be in, because regardless if something's an outcome that you're scared of is has a chance of occurring, um, regardless, you're going to be okay. Like I was still entering the industry. I had so much time to still build myself up. I had so much time to still find my identity. I had so much time to still like do my thing, you know? So I didn't really have to be scared. I didn't really have to be scared of this person or this person's influence, because at the end of it, like my journey was still beautiful. At the end of it, my after the fact, when the curtains closed in that chapter, like or that scene or that act, whatever, what was after that was a beautiful journey. I have loyal clients. I have I make beautiful art. Like I have a huge support system. I have like so many amazing people in this industry. And if you are in a situation similar, you will find that as well. If you are thirsty, and you like thirsty enough for
Yeah.
it, you know what I mean? Hungry enough.
Yeah. That's a beautiful message. Well, okay, first of all, I love that you actually made a Spider-Man reference just after I was talking about Spider-Man. So your Spidey senses were tingling. I love that. But what I'm hearing from you is that I think it's really important to use your influence or power as a way to build and not as a weapon. And
Absolutely.
it sounds to me like what you took away from it is you actually were able to emulate the things you learned and you were able to put it toward your growth, and that became the fire or the fuel in your engine. And now you've got amazing clients, you have loyal clients, like you've been able to build up your business. And sadly, it came from something that may have been from a fallen of a destructive path, but it's also something that like kind of built you up. And so I love that you were able to rise above that, because I firsthand, as long as I've been in the industry, I definitely have seen it do other things to people where it breaks them down or they quit the industry. And so I'm glad to hear that you were able to push through that. So good for you. That makes you just a strong, amazing person. But also, I think it's really good that you're able to speak about it, because we don't hear this enough. Nobody talks about this kind of stuff. They only talk about, like, you hear the good stuff on the other end, but you don't hear the struggle as much. So I love that you were able to like come out the other end and speak about it and not keep it hidden or silent. So thank you so much, Kenny, for sharing all this with us. And as a final wrap up, what do you have coming next? Like, I would love to hear about some things that you have coming up, whether it's goals or just like things that are coming up for you on your end.
Well, I just became an educator with Air Professional. I'm going to start educating for them, and I'm sure that'll be great. I have other companies that I plan on working with. I don't want to speak too much on it right now because nothing's official, but I do have a lot of people like on my corner, and it's like good things are coming in. I do want to get into more editorial work. I live in LA. Right now I'm commuting to Claremont. I'm trying to find a spot in LA that's a salon that is editorial focused. So I'm being very picky, and I'm taking my time. I'm seeing places, checking them out, and I have a stable place to go to. But in the meantime, I don't know. The world's my oyster, and I think I would love to have my own thing. I would love to have my own salon. I would love to have my own, my own.
Yeah. Yes. And you should take it.
Yes.
Take those things. I love it. The world is your oyster. And Kenny, you were like a pearl in that oyster. So I cannot wait to see what's next for you. You guys, I'm going to actually link his Instagram in the show notes so you can check him out. Make sure you give him a follow, give him some love. If any of this story resonated with you, like definitely, I'm going to just like speak on behalf of you, like reach out to him, DM him, and just let him know that if you have anything going on in your life that's even in question, or if you have anything that this brought up for you, like make sure you message him, because this is how we build community. This is how we get to know one another. And I don't even know, like, I love how you and I were able to connect too. So anyway, thank you so much, Kenny. You guys, don't forget to dream big, set goals, take action. We are here for you each step of the way, and we will have more of these uncandid, uncovered 20-minute conversations. And I hope you take care and have an amazing week.